Hi.
All right.
Daniel, are you affiliated? Like, are you Chabad or something?
I've been leading this very confused life. I mostly have been following the Judaism that my father taught me, and you know how we're according to a tradition, you're supposed to develop your own, your own faith. And I haven't been able to really deviate from what I learned as a child. So I guess you would call it modern Orthodox, or but there are lots of variations. I'm not very strict about all these things. So it's been a fluid thing for most of my life, fluid. But I feel very strongly Jewish to my core, and I believe that the Taryag mitzvot, the 613 commandments, and I try my best to fulfill the ones that I'm capable of and avoid the ones that I should avoid. But it's a I guess, I don't know, the way Lev was trying to describe, the parts of my life now that I enjoy are friendship and discussions, and I'm not really that much of a seeker or holding myself to this higher standard. I wished at some point I'll become more consistent, so that what was that one that Reuven was quoting to put a consistent.
Reuven just joined in, and it goes to show Hasidim always begin
Wild.
Oscar Wilde. To put a good face
on. The main thing in life is to pick a pose and hold it.
Pick a pose and hold it. Well, I haven't been able to do that too well.
Pick a pose or pole?
Pose. P-O-S-E.
P-O-S-E.
I like to pick a pole and hold on to it.
That's also a good thing.
Especially if you're Polish.
Everybody can use a little support,
My wife was telling me the joke. My wife's telling me the joke. It's like a quick Jewish joke. She said, this very quickly, these guys are given the task to measure the height of the pole. So they're climbing up and they keep slipping down and just can't measure the height of the pole. Finally, big guy comes in, guy from Texas, and says, "What are you guys doing?" He said, "We measure the height of the pole." So he pulls it out. The pole, he can't climb it because it's slippery, will fall. So he just rips the pole off the ground, lays it down on the ground, and measures it. The guy says, "Oh, you silly! Supposed to measure the height, not the width." So get halacha from that one. Sorry, back to you, Reuven. I'm sorry, you were in the middle of it.
So where were we? I was talking about kashrut, right?
You're talking about Karaite, yeah.
No, I think we were talking about Shabbat.
Yeah, and also, I mean, how much they daven? What kind of prayers do they do?
Yeah, do they use our Siddur?
No, Karaites have their own Siddur, which is made up only of verses from the Bible and the Torah.
So does a Chabad. Chabad also has their own Siddur, right, Reuven?
Davi, why do they pray?
What about the Shmona Esrei? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask the same thing you were. Why do they pray, or what do they pray, or what's the purpose?
The structure, there is no Shmona Esrei. They have a different. The prayer is completely different. Lev actually saw the prayer. I took him once on one Shabbat. Lev went with me to pray with us. So Lev saw the prayer. The prayer is structured completely differently. Unlike like in Rabbinical Judaism, the Shmona Esrei is the prayer. So everything before it and everything after that is not the prayer. In Karaite, everything is the prayer. From the moment you start praying, you're in prayer, period. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the prayer is made up of only from verses from the Bible and the Torah. Although in the last few hundred years, there have been some additional piyutim that were written by Karaite writers, poets. But usually, for almost a 1,000 years, they avoided any piyutim, only verses from the Bible and Torah.
What about Tehillim or the writings of Solomon?
Yes, everything. There's lots of Tehillim in the prayer. A lot of Tehillim in the prayer. And the verses are like mixed. So you can have one verse from Tehillim, one from Shmuel, one from the Torah, and it's all in the right subject of the of the passage of the prayer. There are 7 parts to the prayer, and every part has its own as it's like there is giving thanks to God, giving glory to God. There is asking, there is pleading, there is kedusha, and after the kedusha you have the Shema, which is part of the kedusha, and lastly you have blessed. You have a prayer that you do with yourself, in your heart, quietly, and then the ending. It's like 7 parts to the prayer.
Do you have a Hafta and Totafot?
Only talit, only talis, no tefillin.
Well, the Totafot Beinenecha, what is that? Then into a Karaite.
Why don't you wear tefillin?
Oh, because there's no such thing in the Torah.
Well, how do you translate the first paragraph of the Shema?
Totafot. Well, Totafot basically is an allegory for the Torah, the words of the Torah to be like a totafot between your eyes. Totafot was a jewel.
Beautification.
Totafot is a jewel. Have you ever seen a Yemenite bride? A Jewish Yemenite bride?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so she wears this big thing, and her face is covered with like, I don't know how to explain that in English.
Like a
It's
shawl.
like
Veil, like a veil.
Veil.
it's a veil that is made out of
Strings.
small strings, right?
Like beads, yeah.
Exactly. This is called totafot. The thing that covers her face is totafot. That's what totafot is. So the Torah.
But is there
what?
Is there a distinction in holiness between the 5 books and the rest of the Tanakh? Like, do they consider, rabbinic Judaism, that it says there's a slightly more kedusha, or at least my understanding, to the 5 books as to the rest of Tanakh? Is there? Do the Karaite?
That's a good question. I think, well, the Torah is the most important part of the Bible. Nobody doubts that. The Karaites see
The 5 books.
The 5 books, yeah. The Karaites see the other parts of the Bible as a continuation of the, you can say, basically the words of the prophets are very important, because Karaites, they use the words of the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, everything. They use the words of the prophets as their Talmud, so to speak. So the continuation of for the Karaites, there's only Bible, period, from Bereshit to Divrei Hayamim. And so the other parts of the Bible, if there's something you do not understand from the books of Moses, you can search that in the other books, and you may find an answer there. You may find an answer in Tehillim. You may find an answer in Kohelet. You may find an answer in Shmuel. You may find answers everywhere.
Did they reject Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and the Mishnah from its inception in the year 200? Did they reject it right away, or did it come later?
No, it came later. They rejected it at around year 700. There was a man named Anan ben David. And Anan ben David was, I think, born in Persia. And he was born to just an Orthodox rabbinical family, Orthodox Jew. And he was a very, very big Chacham. And he knew the Talmud inside and out. and they called him to come to Baghdad, which is Babylon, to be a Rosh Yeshiva. And then something happened between him and the management, I would call it, the management of the yeshiva, right? I think it was the yeshiva of Surah. And he should have been the head of the yeshiva. But for some reason, they rejected him. They found a reason to reject him, and he got so mad. He got so mad that he rebelled against rabbis and their way. Basically, Karaism is a rebellion movement against Rabbinical Judaism. And it drives its ideology from the Sadducees and other Jewish groups that came before during the Second Temple. So he said, enough of this thing. I'm going back to Moses. I'm going back. He was really really became very upset with what happened. And he started this movement. But the interesting thing is this. He already knew there were groups, fringe groups, in Persia, in the outskirts of what is today Iraq, Babylonia. There were fringe groups that did not accept the Talmud. They did not accept, I think, well, it depends on how you believe when the Talmud was actually sealed. But let's say they did not accept the oral law, but they were fringe groups, and so he connected with them, and so that's how in a very short time the movement became very big. Like in 100 years, the movement became very big. And during the days of the Rambam,
there was wide rejection of the oral law throughout our time in the desert and afterwards. And supposedly, and what do I know? I live in Georgia this year, but from what I understand, the oral law was finally accepted in Persia at the time of Purim, and the Jews turned towards oral law after that moment. You have so much in, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the belief that oral law was accepted at Purim. But there's so much in oral law. For instance, David, we're learning now in Kedushin about Ezra, as you just mentioned, and which group can marry which group. What are the different groups of Judaism? What is the role of the Kohanim? How do the Karaites look at all of this? Do they reject it? Can everyone marry everyone? What about a Gerusim or an Almanah? How do you guys look at all these issues that the rabbis have discussed so deeply?
What those were those two words? Did you say Gerush?
Like, for instance, a divorcee or a widow to marry a Kohen.
Grusha.
It's in accordance with the Torah. What the Torah says, that's what you do.
Are there provisions for a get?
For what?
For a get. A divorce document.
For the divorce.
Is there a get? Yes, there is a get.
In Karaism, yeah.
Yes, there is a get.
Is there a mourner's kaddish? Is there a mourner's kaddish or kaddish to Rabbanan?
No, there's no kaddish. There's no kaddish.
David, I'm reading an interesting book about Reconstruction. Reconstruction is the period after the Civil War, and it's a very bright author who wrote this book, and he made a comment that struck me last night. He said that whatever document is created, it has to be filled in, whether it's the Constitution, whether it's the Declaration of Independence, whether it's the Sefer Torah, and that every document bears interpretation, every great document, and it almost seems like there's such a strong, and I'm confused by the hesitancy to want to expound on Torah. It seems I understand this guy was mad at the rabbis. Everyone's mad at the rabbis. This goes through the Second Temple period. But
we're still mad at the rabbis.
Still mad at the rabbis. I'm mad at some rabbis. But there's the wholesale rejection of rabbinic interpretation does, I'm being open here because, as Lev says, we're a very open group. I'm perplexed. Right, Lev? I'm perplexed by the wholesale
That's the best
rejection.
part. That's the best part of us. Look at us how we get along. And nobody's and we have a great time.
One
I'm
rabbi
perplexed by the
in
wholesale
Chicago.
rejection of rabbinic interpretation. Could you fill me in on that, David, a little bit?
Yes.
One rabbi in Chicago. Let me just say this. I was having some trouble with Yiddishkeit, back some many years ago. And he said, Reuben, everybody who's from has some problem with some part of Judaism. Some people can't stand kashrut, can't stand mikveh. Some people hate tefillin. Everybody has something, so it's like to be upset about something is normal. That's all. That was a good word. It's like it's not unusual.
Can a Yama Melech, you guys experts in the oral and the written law, can a Yama Melech be used as a mikveh?
A what?
Yama Melech, Dead Sea. Can you use it as a mikveh?
I don't know what the word you're using.
What
can be used?
Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea.
Beach.
Oh, Yamamelech. Okay, Yamamelech. Okay.
Can you be
I
used
would
as
say no, because you can't immerse completely. It's almost impossible.
But you can if somebody pushes you under.
Kind of gross.
Yeah, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous for your eyes.
But the
water has to be coming in and out. It has to be a regular flow, and it doesn't flow out. It only flows in.
So you can. Okay, now I know.
To answer Bob about rejecting rabbinical interpretation, this is the problem. I'll give you an example. You said that the tradition is unbroken. That's not true. If you go to Samaritans, they have the Torah with 6,000 differences of the Masoretic Torah that we use. And it's all written in ancient Hebrew letters. And they pronounce it, the way they utter the words is in ancient Hebrew, the way Moses would probably speak. Okay.
Well, the Samaritans, the rabbis do not recognize as Jewish.
Of course not. The rabbis. Okay, I'll shut up. Samaritans. There's one thing that I discovered, which is extremely interesting. The verse Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. If you read through the Bible, you come very quickly to the conclusion that there's two Israeli, basically, regions, the north and the south, the kingdom of Judah and kingdom of Israel. Now, in the kingdom of, in the north, they worshipped not only, I'm going to say his name, not only Yahweh, but also Baal, all sorts of Baal this, Baal that, and all of that. Yeah. And of course, you have the story of Elijah coming then and proving the power of the real God against the powers, the false powers of the Baal. There was a place where they worshipped Yahweh, and it was in the Shomron. And there was a time where there was actually two versions of the deity called Yahweh. There was Yahweh Shomron and Yahweh Jerusalem. And the text in the Torah, basically the meaning of the text, what is Shema Israel? Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. It's the Judaic, it's in the Judaic priests basically telling the northern people, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. There is no Yahweh Shomron. You guys are wrong. Yeah. There is no such. There's only Yahweh Jerusalem. Only Yahweh Jerusalem is the real God of Israel. So this is the meaning. This is the meaning of the verse. This is basically a polemic against religious beliefs of the Northern Israelites. So that's one thing. But this actually has nothing to do
Well,
with
you could call it seeking unity, so that there shouldn't be a division.
Yes, but you can also say that they reject that version of Yahweh. They say, no, it's only Jerusalem.
It was a temple
And this is
that they were
and
rejecting,
probably
not the God, no, the temple itself, the service on Harival and what was it, the two it was in Shiloh. It was Shiloh, right? They were rejecting the temple in that location, not the God. The God they say is the same God. Echad.
no in the
Yeah.
Torah. No, yeah, the Torah. I see the Torah as a book that like what you said is tries to unite all the Israelites around one God, because and because all over the Bible there's many other gods. Like even the word that we use in Hebrew for fish, dagim, it comes from the name of a god, Dagon, which had the symbol of a fish. So so they were worshiping many different gods, some Canaanite gods, some Sumerian gods. It's an entire it's the same pantheon of ancient Canaanite gods. And so they were trying to make this coalition of tribes coming together under the same deity, because that was the glue that made the society, and it still makes societies up until today. This is what non-religious people do not understand about religion in the human sense, in the social sense, that it brings people together. We are a civilization, we're a society, we're together, we stick together, etc. Yeah.
So how do Karaites view modern rabbinic thought? How do they interact with the modern rabbinate? I mean, what's their view? What's the Karaite view on who a rabbi is today? Not necessarily historically, but today.
Okay.
Do they have the same? Yeah.
The same what?
Thing.
The same. Can they interpret the Torah with authority, the way that this the Karaite interpretation, or no?
No.
Are they discrediting? Are they discrediting modern rabbinic thought?
Absolutely, completely. In Karaite Judaism, there is no such thing as Rabbanut. I mean, Rabbanut in a personal sense. If you have a problem, Karaite Judaism says this: it's your responsibility to interpret the Torah. Every Jew has to interpret the Torah because that's what the Torah says. If you have a problem, you don't know how to perform a certain mitzvah, what do you have to do, etc. You can go to a Karaite Chacham and ask them, because there are like the wise man of the community, etc. So
They're
they
kind
are
of rabbis. They're kind of equivalent to what
kind of rabbis, but it's really kind of rabbis, because they tell you, okay, this is what the text says. Karaites have been traditionally making they were very learned in ancient Hebrew. They have lots of books about the Hebrew language, because the Hebrew is very important to understand the Torah, because it's a ancient Hebrew, it's biblical Hebrew, and the Hebrew has changed through the centuries, unfortunately. The Hebrew we speak today is non-biblical at all. So so they spend a lot of time learning that, and so you can basically, so the Karaite rabbi will say, okay, this is what the Torah says. I cannot tell you what to do. So the Karaite rabbi will basically say, listen, you are forbidden eating pork. The Torah forbids you eating pork, but if you eat pork, it's your responsibility. because the Torah says, Adam bechet'o yumat. A man will die under his own sin, or for his own sin. So I cannot force you. The law has already been given. There's no lawyers in Karaite Judaism. And so nobody can make a law. You cannot make a law because the law is there. It was given to Moses.
The lawyers, when you think about it, right?
Okay.
Well, there must be a batei dinim for disputes. They have to have some form of a beit din.
Yes. Yeah. There's a beit din. There is a beit din. There is kashrut. There is get. I have a very interesting book, but it's in Hebrew. So I don't know I don't know if you guys can read it.
Daniel is fluent in Hebrew.
Okay.
Oh well, I have limitations. I'm reading basic stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So I have it's a very interesting book. It's called Torah Zahav Karaite, the Golden Age of Karaism. And in this book, there's a few examples of all sorts of Karaite documents. One of them is very interesting. It is a ketubah that was made for a man who comes from Rabbinical Judaism to a Karaite bride. It's from the I think from the 13th or 12th century, sometime after the Rambam. So they were intermarrying. Orthodox Jews and Karaite Jews were intermarrying. And the Ketubah says that the groom, the husband, who is Orthodox, he has to respect the religious differences of his Karaite wife. And one of the differences, one of the most, I think, famous differences, is that Karaites do not engage in sexual activity on Shabbat. Because in Karaite Judaism, and you can ask any Ethiopian Jew, you ask them, do you guys have sex on Shabbat? They will say, no. Shabbat, asur.
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 I've heard of this. I heard of this. Yeah.
That's
it's
because
shocking.
because they had no knowledge of Talmud. Ethiopian Jews did not even know Talmud existed until very recently. They didn't know the Mishnah, never heard of it. And so their interpretation and the
forbidden?
Why is it forbidden?
Why is it forbidden?
It is forbidden.
Why?
Okay, I will answer. It is forbidden because for two reasons. Number one, after you have sex, you are tameh, and you cannot wash yourself on Shabbat. If you are tameh, you cannot go to a synagogue. You are forbidden from synagogue. Number two, it's considered like charisha basadeh. It's like considered like
plowing.
What?
Plowing a field? Plowing a field?
Yes, it's like exactly plowing. Absolutely, that's what it's considered. So in other words, it's considered melacha.
Like putting seed in the ground.
Yes.
David, what is
that's wild.
David, what's the relationship of? I'm learning a lot about Karaite Jews. What's the relationship between Karaite Jews and Kabbalah and Tanya, and also what we call here Pardes, the deeper interpretation of Torah from Remez to Sod to mysticism? I mean, how does the Karaite Jews look at all that? And do you guys read Tanya, for instance?
I don't even want to say the word what they think about it.
You could say it, that's okay.
No, it's late. What about a linguist?
Don't get the impression that David is Karaite. He is exposed to different views. He's just understand.
Oh, by the way, I read the Mishnah. I learned the Mishnah. Right now, I'm in Masechet Avodah Zarah, and I read a lot of rabbinical literature. I try to.
David is not Karaite.
I also read Karaite. I also read Karaite literature. What
Now, what about
I
what about a
accept is-
linguist like Rashi, an 11th century French rabbi like Rashi?
Yeah.
He's primarily a linguist. His analysis is almost always interpreting the pshat, the exact meaning of the Torah for the masses,
Yes, Rashi is very respected in Karaite Judaism, and there is I saw an entire Tanakh in the Karaite synagogue here in Beersheba with Rashi.
Dabi, I just want to mention something to you, which is a little bit off the subject, but I have a degree in physics, which is, of course, not nearly as impressive as a degree in engineering like Lev has, but it's
Of course not.
not even close.
I'm limited only fluids.
But anyway, I went through physics because I was also, besides wanting a job, I was looking for answers, but I got no answers from physics. It's just very descriptive. But when I read Tanya, and I'm telling you this because you might be interested, I know you like to read. When I read Tanya, and I learned about Tzimtzum, and I learned about the Sfirot, and the connection between the material world and the spiritual world, I got more answers than I ever got in college. You might be interested in some of those subjects that Tanya brings up. You might find it more interesting. You might want to look into it.
Yeah, I know about Tzimtzum. Mostly it comes from the Kabbalah of the Ari. Right?
Right.
It's very interesting. I will just say this: the reason why these theories are not accepted by Karaites is this is one thing where I differ. There's things in Karaite Judaism that I do not accept. So I find flaws in Rabbinical Judaism because it goes away when it comes to the law of God. It goes away very far from the Torah. And on the other hand, I absolutely agree and accept the fact that many things in the Torah and the Bible are not historical accuracies. They are more supposed to be, spiritual material, allegory.
Allegory.
Right.
No,
And
but that's true. The
do not
Torah is
accept
not.
allegories.
Although interestingly, Rashi, I think Rashi and also Rambam say that unless otherwise and obviously stated, Torah is meant to be historical. But Chabad says Torah is not historical. It depends who you ask.
I'll mention something. We have 7 minutes. 7 minutes. We still have time. But I mentioned something. I mentioned Rashi. The night would not be complete if I told you the story. First of all, two things. First of all, I know Daniel and Bob, if you know, David and I and Reuven had coffee a couple of weeks ago, and we decided to form a government in exile. David is a king because we found that David is a king. I am a right-hand guy, executioner. I'll be chief executioner. He'll give me the sword and a gun. And Reuven is in charge of Sidim and doctor medical things. So many positions still open.
Can I be minister of golf?
You can. You got it. You got it.
I'd like to be in charge of music.
Music and Levites and everything else. You got David. That's okay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Daniel?
You'll be the secretary of culture.
Secretary of culture. That will be David.
Okay.
So David approved.
You're expanding my profile.
And another story, important halachic story.
And there's lots of opportunities in exile,
A lot of opportunities. And the second important story I need to mention, guys, in over 6 minutes, I take only one of them. It's, Rashi just mentioned, maybe I told Reuven, I don't know if you remember, that one guy is building the house. He's building the house, takes 2 weeks, and he nails the last nail, and the whole house collapses. Did I tell you the story, Reuven? I don't remember.
Yeah.
You didn't hear it? But I'll tell you for Daniel and Bob. So he goes to Rabbi, and Rabbi says, you can't just build a house like that. You need to, we have a Torah, we have all this. Read what it says. We do everything by the book of the Torah. How can you do without Torah? Read the book, he gives all the instructions, Deuteronomy this and Exodus that, and all how they use pyramids and what they use. The guy does it 2 weeks, last nail, house collapses. Comes back to Rabbi, and he says, listen, the house collapsed again. You'll get all the instructions. He said, listen, did you read only Torah? What about prophets? What about all that? No. How he reads all, now I got right instructions. He goes back, and he does it, and 2 weeks later, last nail, whole house collapses. Goes back to Rabbi and say, Rabbi, 2 times you gave me these instructions. A house collapses. What's going on here? So, okay, wait a minute. Let me just look in Talmud. Looks at, interesting. Rashi is asking the same question. I just thought I'd just mention this on the light side a little bit, guys.
You know, Lev, a good variation of that story is he looks into Talmud and he notices that Rashi doesn't make any comment. So he has
Rashi's quiet on that.
Oh, Rashi's quiet on that, right?
Hey, Bob, is the Tanya translated in English? Is it available in English?
Oh,
it is. It's
yeah,
available.
I have a copy. I'm sure, Ruben, you have. I have a beautiful copy. My wife learned. She taught me Tanya. We were reading together, and we have a Tanya beautiful edition. If you want, I can show you to you, Daniel.
Daniel, listen. Daniel, there's a copy that's in English with the Hebrew and also with commentary by the Rebbe. It's very clearly written, and you might.
Can I find it online? Is it available online?
Yes, it's at Chabad.org. 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 Yeah, the whole thing is on
How
there.
long is it? How long is it? Is it fat? It's a big book, huh?
It's small books, but there's about 5. It's different than what you're showing, Lev. The one with the Rebbe's commentary is about 5 small volumes. It's not big. 5 small.
This is beautiful. I'll see how it looks inside. See,
if you like philosophical that explains, the idea of how the world is created from nothing, you can start with Shar HaYichud.
It's beautiful, beautiful book.
That's one of my favorite ones. It's very interesting.
Can I
12 pages.
I just wanted to say that 2 things. One, there's a guy, I mentioned him a few times. His name is Yeshayahu Leibowitz. He died in 1994. He was a strictly Orthodox Jew, a fierce defender of oral Torah. And he thought that Kabbalah is complete idolatry, and he completely rejected that. He was not a rabbi, but a very famous Jewish philosopher. And he said that Kabbalah is idol worshiping, and he completely rejected that. So that's so you have Jews that, and of course you do remember the conflict between Hasidim and Mitnagdim and all of that. So those ideas were not always. The Judaism we have today is a coming together of Hasidim and Mitnagdim, and you can see that in the Sidurim. You can see that in the Sidurim.
He's also a hard leftist.
He was a hard leftist.
Looks like this.
Oh yeah. Here's what Bob is showing, the Tanya 4 volumes. Yeah.
It looks like that, Daniel. They're yellow. They're small volumes.
Okay.
And the Alter Rebbe's on the cover.
But I can show it to you, Daniel. If you want to, I can show it to the one I have. The one Bob is showing, I'm sure.
Leibowitz celebrate soldiers.
Guys, we only have 1.5 minutes, guys.
What I want to know for you, Chabadnikim, is why didn't the Rebbe stop the people from doing this Melech HaMashiach stuff? Why didn't he stop them?
He did.
I mean,
he
it's still going on, and it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate.
Well, Daniel, the Rebbe did. He was vehemently against it, and those who are leaders of Chabad today are vehemently against it. He was not for that kind of.
Well, let's see what Chabad. Reuven is our Chabadnik representative. Reuven, what do you say?
Yeah, what I would say is the Rebbe has to decide what's in the best interest of the entire community. And he was in favor of promoting the idea of Mashiach. And I would say, to the extent that he didn't suppress it more forcefully, is that he felt that it would do more harm than good.
That's interesting, because he desperately wanted Mashiach. I know at the end of his life, he was having all the yeshivos studying Taharos and Kodeshim, and he was the blueprints. The blueprints are in the Mishnah for the Mishkan, for the building of the Beis Hamikdash, and he was associating it with.
Guys,
he's also a political leader, and a political leader has to think of what's the least.
Guys, sorry, I haven't
the lesser of evils.
We have 13 seconds.
Okay.
We'll see you next Tuesday at 2000 hours, and this is a number for those who will be reading. Thank you, guys. Have a
Thank you,
good one.
David. Thank you,
Okay.
Ruben.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you, Bob.
you.
Great.